Create strikingly surreal portraits with just a handful of stock photos and adjustment layers. Today, we'll be looking at how to create a melting portrait photo effect in Photoshop. All resources featured here today can be found down in the description and on Envato Elements. Get unlimited downloads of graphics, photos, and fonts with Envato Elements. Millions of creative digital assets with simple commercial licensing, and you can cancel anytime. I'm Abby Esparza with Envato Tuts Plus. Let's jump right into it. First, I have just a super simple background set up. Anything dark will work perfectly. Now we need to place and prep our model. Extract the model using your preferred method. I tend to use either the pen tool or subject select. Once your subject is extracted, add a layer mask and mask out the top portion of the model's head using a semi-soft round brush. Next, we are going to create a hue saturation adjustment layer, and then first adjust the reds to +8 and +13, and then onto the blues with a +180 and -100. Next up, let's create and clip a color balance adjustment layer into the subject, setting the highlights to +21, 0, -20, and then the midtones to +33, 0, and -25. We are going to mask out the golden tones from the subject's face and lower body. Once happy, make a curves adjustment layer and decrease the lightness. Mask out the middle of the subject so that the edges of the subject are darker than the center. Next, we are going to use another curves adjustment layer to increase the contrast of the model. This type of curve is called an S-curve. If you notice any areas that are too dark or over-contrasted, feel free to mask them on out. We are going to add another hue saturation adjustment layer to reduce the golden light color, bringing the saturation down to -32. And finally, we are going to finish up by increasing the shadows underneath the subject's nose and mouth, using a layer set to multiply with a dark brown brush. Extract and place the top portion of a partially melted candlestick over the subject's face. Once we have our general placement of the candlestick, we are going to add a mask and start to blend the bottom half of the candle into the subject's face. Pay close attention to the wax and how it flows. Don't forget to lower the brush's flow rate to help create smooth transitions from wax to skin. You're going to want to take your time here. Once happy with our blending, we are going to select a selection of the original candle, place it over the subject's face, and blend it into the skin just as before. Add some dripping wax by selecting a long, thin piece of wax from the original candle, and using both a soft and hard round brush to blend the wax onto the current subject's face. Use a soft brush to blend and a hard brush to shape. Once happy with your wax, group all of the wax layers together into a group named Candle Wax. We are going to change the color of the wax by clipping a hue saturation adjustment layer into the Candle Wax group, setting the hue to +42 and the saturation to -22. We are then going to finish this wax up with a curves adjustment layer, bringing in some shadows by pulling down the middle of the curve. And then we are going to use the layer mask to mask out any shadows on top of the candle wax as well as on some of the higher points of the wax, bringing back some of the highlights. Now let's add our candle flame. Place a candle flame directly over the wick of the wax and mask out any excess candle. If the flame isn't blending nicely, you can try setting its layer mode to screen. Next, let's create a new layer below the flame, setting it to color dodge and around 80% or so opacity. Then we are going to paint a small amount of light coming from the flame using a pale orange tan color. Create a new layer above the flame, this time setting it to hard light and 40% or so opacity. Paint even more light coming from the candle using a soft round brush set to a similar but darker, slightly more saturated orange tan color. Let's add our last bits of dripping wax. Use either the pin tool or lasso tool to select chunks of wax from a melting candle. We are going to copy and paste these selections over the subject's face, as well as place them on his shirt. Use layer masks and both soft and hard brushes to blend out the edges of the wax. Some droplets of wax will require more blending, while others you may want to keep the overall shape. Remember to flip, rotate, and transform the drops of wax as you see fit. Once you are happy with the wax drops, group them together. Now we are going to create and clip a hue saturation adjustment layer into the wax drops group, setting it to +14 and -42, changing its color so that it matches the main head of wax. Next up, we are going to add a curves adjustment layer to bring more light to the wax drops. If there are any areas that become too bright, go ahead and mask them out. We are going to repeat the previous steps one more time, adding even more dripping wax strands onto the wax head. Grouping those wax strands together and then clipping in a channel mixer layer set to first the red output channel with +113, +52, and +43, and then onto the blue output channel set to -73, 0, and +100. Now we are going to create and clip a hue saturation adjustment layer into the wax strands group, setting the hue to +7 and the saturation to -43. Finishing up the color correction with another S-curve layer. Make sure to mask out any areas you feel are too dark or contrasty. And then we can finalize the wax by creating a new multiply layer below the wax groups and painting in some shadows using a dark brown color. Set the opacity of the brush to 30% so you can build the shadows up slowly. Now onto our final touches. Create a layer set to multiply and 40% opacity. Use a medium brown color with a semi-hard round brush to darken the lower lip of the subject. This will cast a shadow and add a bit of color to the bottom lip. Let's make another new layer and change our brush's color to a very dark brown. We are going to use a medium soft round brush to paint the shadow that the head would be casting. Once happy with the shape of the shadow, lower the opacity of its layer to 60 to 80% or so. We're going to finish up with some good old dodge and burn. Create a new layer, change the layer mode to overlay, and fill it with 50% gray. Grab the dodge and burn tool and set the exposure to about 15 to 25%. Now refine the highlights and shadows of the candle, face, and shoulders, focusing on the space between the wax lines. Basically, we are bringing out the details of the wax. We can then bring everything together with a color balance adjustment layer, with the midtone set to +20, 0, and -20, the shadows set to +10, 0, and -7, and the highlights set to +38, 0, and -24. And that is all there is to creating a melting portrait photo effect in Photoshop. And if that wasn't enough and you're looking to learn even more Photoshop photo effects, why not check out some of the other excellent videos that Envato Tuts Plus has to offer. If you like this video and would like to see more, consider giving us a like, and even subscribing if you haven't already. And don't forget to click the little bell icon to be notified of all new videos, including tips, tricks, and tutorials. Happy designing, see you next time.